everybody, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a minute since I posted a video, but a lot's been happening. I've been wanting to do this video for quite a while now, and in light of recent news about Lakeview behavioral health, I thought that it was a good time to talk about my hospital experience. I went to Lakeview Behavioral Health on January 1st, 2019. This year. It's crazy to think that it was this year and it was not that long ago that I was in the hospital. But if you don't know, Lakeview is currently under a murder investigation. I don't know if they've ruled it as murder, but a patient of theirs died. And as far as I have been able to see in the news, they're suspecting murder, perhaps like overdose of medications. The last I read, they were waiting on toxicology. So really kind of scary, even if it wasn't a murder, that somebody died at Lakeview. Thinking about that brings up memories, you know, I was there. I was in that hospital. So let me rewind. Let me take you on the journey. Let me take you back to January 1st, 2019. I was staying with some friends at the time. I wasn't well enough to stay on my own at my house because I was feeling thoughts of suicide. My anxiety was at an all-time high. Many of you have seen videos before and you know that I've dealt with anxiety for my whole life basically, and it's always kind of been up and down, up and down, up and down. Well, I guess it was like this time last year, a little bit before, like September of last year, I started taking a nosedive. And my anxiety just started going way high, way up through the roof. And so during that time, I don't even know how to express to you or tell you like exactly why I went through that, why my anxiety started shooting through the roof. There were a lot of different things. One thing you need to know about my anxiety is that it is not always situational. Sometimes it's like brought on by a situation, but the fact that it persists so long, and just given my family history, it's also biological. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. They think, oh, just think happy thoughts or meditate or read your Bible or pray more and you won't be anxious. That's not always the case. My body doesn't produce the right amount of hormones in my brain to keep my body happy, and I can't help that. So definitely not something that a lot of people are aware of. My anxiety tends to be that way, and in this particular case, I just couldn't get a grip on it. I've gone through seasons where I've been on medication and seasons where I haven't been. It got to the point where I had some friends invite me to come live with them for a while just to keep me safe. And I'm sorry if I get emotional during this video, just it's still really raw, you know? And the people that brought me into their home are still very much a part of my life, and I know that I would probably not be here if they hadn't took me in. January the 1st, I had been there for a couple months. I've been living in their home, and my friend and I were at their house. The couple I was living with were out for the night and they were gonna be back later. Well, the fireworks started going off, and that's something that I guess just triggers me sometimes. Loud noises and big crowds are one of those things that I can't really explain to you why, it just is. And the fireworks set me off and I started having an anxiety attack. So my friend, being an amazing person she is, tried to help me through it, and we went downstairs to the basement where we maybe, you know, couldn't hear them as loud, and she turned on some worship music like really loud for me to listen to. And 3 hours later, I'm still having the attack. And I don't remember thinking anything during that moment except I'm crazy. Something bad is wrong with me and I can't help it, and I don't know what's about to happen to me. I feel like I could just die right now. And finally my friends came home and they came down there with me for a while and finally decided like, okay, like we can't do anything for you right now, so we're gonna call 911. So they called 911 and the paramedics came in, and they had to call a doctor just to find out what was safe to give me for anxiety. And they gave me a drug called Versed. Many of you may have heard of this drug. It's typically a drug that you are given before a surgery in order to calm you down and just kind of mellow you out before you go in for surgery. It knocks grown men out, if that tells you anything. Well, the first shot didn't do anything for me. If anything, it made me like more anxious. So they gave me a second shot and it didn't help. And so they decided at that point it was time for me to go in. So they loaded me up, and I don't remember anything past this point. I believe that the drugs had something to do with that. I have some sort of weird reaction to Versed that has the opposite effect on me. Instead of calming me down, it actually hypes me up, and I become very combative and resistant to help. Apparently, I threw a few punches, and I had to tie my arms down inside the ambulance because I was like fighting them and not letting them help me. The next thing I know, I'm waking up in the emergency room, and I look around and I've got like these little sticky things on me from where they, I guess, you know, did my heart rate, that thing that they do, I don't know what it's called. And I wasn't tied down anymore. But I looked up, and there sat the couple that had invited me into their home. They were sitting there, and they were like, hey, and they're, you know, being so sweet. And then there was this other girl sitting at the door in a chair. So come to find out, she's my babysitter. Apparently when you are suicidal, that's what you get a babysitter. And during my 3-hour-long anxiety attack, I was shoving my head and hitting it as hard as I could into my knees, trying to get the panic attack to stop. And it, you know, that was hurting myself, you know. So they put me under suicide watch, and my friends looked at me and they were like, hey, and guess what time it is? And I'm like, 8 o'clock at night. And they're like, no, it's like 3 in the morning. I was like, oh my gosh, why are y'all here? Go home. A doctor came in and asked me all kinds of questions. And they asked me, have you ever tried to hurt yourself? Are you suicidal? Are you homicidal? Just a lot of questions. And I answered as honestly as I could, because at this point I knew there was nothing, you know, I couldn't help myself anymore. My friends obviously couldn't help me anymore. And after that little interview, the doctor said, I'm gonna go speak to the head doctor and give you a recommendation to go home. Based on your answers, I don't think that you need to be admitted anywhere. And I think in my head I was still like, it wasn't clicking for me. I think the drugs were still working on me. A couple minutes later, the doctor came back and they said, just kidding, basically, like, we think that you need to go because this is the worst panic attack we've ever seen. And it still wasn't clicking for me, but another doctor came in and said, okay, this is the time where you guys have to leave her and we have to take her to another place. I very vaguely remember them hugging me and telling me goodbye, and that they would see me as soon as they could. And whew, it just it was so surreal, because it didn't click for me in that moment that I was actually being sent to a psychiatric hospital. There was nothing I could do about it. If you don't know, the medical term is a 1013, and your doctor signs a form that basically says you have to go to this place and you can't get out until we think you're better. It was against my will, it was against my wishes. I wasn't combative at that point because I was still drugged and I didn't know really what was happening. I think in the back of my mind I had an idea, but it didn't hit me until I was on another ambulance headed to Lakeview. And I got there and I went through this, you know, screening process, and it's 4 or 5 in the morning. I remember sitting on level 3. They put me on level 3 with the psychotic patients. I guess because I was suicidal, put the more severe patients on 3. So I remember sitting in the little common area, and I was by myself. There were some doctors at the nurses station, and there were like a couple random people like up and about at that hour. I know that's weird, but you know, in a psychiatric hospital, you just don't know what you're gonna see. I remember sitting there and I just started crying and trying to be quiet. I was exhausted. It's like 4 or 5 in the morning, and nobody was being nice to me. Nobody asked me if I was okay. The nurse that had brought me up was a really big black guy, and he called me back over, and got my vitals, and they took blood. Then I had to go into another room and wait for a nurse to ask me all the questions that had already been asked. And why are you here is one of the things she asked me, and I was like, because the doctor made me come. I had a 3-hour-long panic attack that wasn't my fault, and now I feel punished by coming here. That's how it felt to me. I remember sitting in that room, and she was like, okay, now we have to like do a body check. And so we went to my new room, the room that I was placed in, and went into the bathroom, and the lady was like stripped naked, and so I had to strip in front of her. And ladies, I don't know if you get this. I think that you will. I'm not embarrassed to talk about it now. It was very embarrassing at first. Do you ever sit like and kind of slouch, and you know that little line that you get like about like like right here. I don't know, that's where mine is. It's like right here in between my rib cage and my little flab that I have. I'd been sitting for quite a while waiting on them. This process took hours. That line was there for me sitting so long. And I also have other scars on my stomach from surgery. So they were like, what are these from? What are these from? And I was like, I had surgery. And obviously they're trying to check and see if you have any open wounds or if you've hurt yourself or cut yourself or anything like that. And then there was the other line from where I'd been sitting, and the nurse was like, what is that? And the other nurse said, oh, that's just her fat. That's a fat roll. And I was humiliated. There I was in Lakeview, stuck in there, feeling very punished for something I couldn't control. And I have two nurses staring at my naked body, telling me that that line on my stomach is a fat roll. Oh, you guys. It broke my heart. It hurt my feelings so bad. Finally, after that, they were like, okay, go lay down. And it was like 6 in the morning, and they start waking patients up at 7. And now thinking back, I could have slept longer, but because everybody was getting up and moving around, I thought that I had to be up and moving around. And so I had gotten an hour of sleep after being up for, you know, that long the day before and being drugged up. So the first day was really rough. I was there for 6 days. The psychiatrist I was assigned to was barely there. Like he came and saw us maybe every other day, and I think he meant well, but he would say things like, oh, you should probably be good to leave tomorrow. How are you feeling? He kept teasing me with that whole, oh, you should be good to leave tomorrow. He said that on Friday, and I didn't go home until Monday. The group therapy there was everybody sitting in a room with a piece of paper that looked like it was from like a 2nd grade coloring book or something. One of the ones was like 3 balloons on a page, and you had to write your feelings in them. And then if you wanted to talk about it, you could. It was crazy. Like, there was no help in there. They upped my medicine by 50 milligrams, and they're like, that should start making you feel a lot better. Medicine doesn't work that fast. I mean, maybe sometimes it does. In my case, I felt worse when I got out of Lakeview. Every morning we had to fill out a sheet of paper. It was like a daily check-in, and you had to talk about your goal for the day and how many hours of sleep you got. Did you eat all 3 meals? If yes, or if no, why? And the food there was like 3 steps below cafeteria food. I'm not joking when I say that. It smelled everywhere. My roommate was a 24-year-old who had been in foster care system since she was young. She'd been to Lakeview 10+ times. All the staff members knew who she was. Bless her heart. She had cuts, fresh cuts on her arms. She was suicidal. She dealt with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and she couldn't hold her bowel movements. She didn't know when her body was telling her to use the bathroom, so she wore diapers. Their room smelled awful. They had to force her to shower, and I had to be in a room with her. It was really, really bad. And I felt sorry for her because she didn't know, like, she couldn't help it, you know? And just being on the 3rd floor was really traumatic for me. I saw things, I heard people saying things. There were people on that floor that were pregnant. There were like 3 or 4 girls that were pregnant. One of them was schizophrenic, and her stepfather had gotten her pregnant, and she was now homeless. She had nowhere to go afterwards. She was like having a really hard day one day, and they didn't really do anything to help her. You know, she started having an anxiety attack, and I've been there, you know? And they just gave her a shot of Haldol and sent her to her room, and she slept for a long time. And I know it was the drugs, you know, and they just gave her a drug so that they wouldn't have to deal with her. And that's what happens at Lakeview. That's what happened to so many people on my floor. And those people genuinely need help, and they got nothing. And I know that everybody comes from a different situation. My situation was different than that girl's, but she needed someone, and she needed someone to help her learn how to process through an anxiety attack. But instead, she got shot up with drugs and sent to her room and told to be quiet. I think that was the most devastating part for me, was seeing that if you are having a hard time, you have to hide it unless you want to get shot up with a drug and sent to your room, like being punished. And so I would hide in my room, and I would lock the door in the bathroom, and I would have an anxiety attack and not tell anybody. And they wouldn't give you anything. They wouldn't give me anything for anxiety. All they gave me was more of the drug that I already had, you know, and it was really, really hard to be in there that long and be subjected to a wide variety of illnesses and just see other people hurting so badly. And I'm sorry. I did get a visitation day from my parents. I actually had 6 people come to see me in the hospital. I was very grateful for that. It was really embarrassing to, you know, have your parents sit across from you, and they were not judgmental at all. And I'm very grateful for the support that I've had through my whole journey, and I love my parents so much, and I'm so thankful for them through this process. And the couple that I was living with, they came and saw me, and I felt nothing but love. But my goodness, all I could do was condemn myself. And because I felt like it was my fault. I felt like I could have stopped the panic attack, or I could have done something. I could have lied to the doctor in the hospital and not been in that situation. Like I said before, Lakeview did more damage than it did good. I left with PTSD from everything that I saw in the hospital months after, and still sometimes today when I hear sirens, I go to this place in my head like, they're coming for you. And I know how irrational that sounds, but it feels like, you know, anytime I hear an ambulance, there's an emergency or something, and it feels like, oh, I was there. And I just get this knot in my stomach, like, oh, what if that happens again? So recovery has been kind of difficult. I'm doing so much better now, and I'll get to that. After I left Lakeview, I was mandated to see a psychiatrist and also go to therapy for a certain amount of time after my hospital visit. So I did that. My psychiatrist, I still see the same one. I really like him. He's a great person. We don't really talk about stuff, but he always listens to me, and he helps me with my medications. My medications are stable now, and I'm in a really good place with that. I'm confident in saying that, and I'm a huge advocate for medicine. And if you want to talk about that, I'll probably do another video on medicine, actually, because it's really important to me. And I went to group therapy for a while, and at first it was really boring because there were only like 2 or 3 of us in there. We had to fill out a sheet before groups started as well there, and it had similar questions like, how are you feeling today on a scale of 1 to 10? Do you feel suicidal, homicidal, all that stuff? And I remember marking yes that I felt suicidal one day. After group was over, the group therapy leader, she's like, Rebecca, I need to see you in my office after. And my heart started pounding in my chest. I was like, she's gonna send me back. She's gonna send me back to Lakeview. And I just remember freaking. I was shaking, my legs were going like crazy in her office. And she's like, let's just talk about it. Like, I just wanna get a feel for where you are. She's like, I have to bring you in when you say this, just to make sure that you're not going to try to do anything when you leave and any, you know, that kind of stuff. So I explained to her, and she said something to me in the office, and I feel like this was kind of a turning point for me. We had done this worksheet. It was like asking you a question. It was like, how do you know this is true? And I said, one of the things that I said was that I'm crazy. And it's like, how do you know this is true? I said, because I've had a mental breakdown. And when you have a mental breakdown, you go crazy. That's just what it is. And she challenged my thought. She said, what is crazy to you? I was like, crazy is a mental breakdown. She goes, that's what society has said. Society says that if you've had a mental breakdown, then you're crazy. But that's not the truth. A mental breakdown is just where your body can't handle it anymore. And you may feel crazy, but you're not crazy. And she said it in such a way that I started to believe that I wasn't crazy anymore, and that everything that I had gone through was valid. And that 3-hour-long panic attack that was later, I found out, a mental breakdown, didn't define me as a crazy person. And I think that the reason I thought that for so long is because I got sent to where crazy people go. And I don't say things like that anymore just because I've been there. The people in there, they have issues, but they're not crazy. They need help, and they need love and support just like you do. So it was from that point on that I started to kind of heal from that mindset. But there were other things that helped me get through the process and to help me to get where I am now. One of those things, and my number one thing, was the Holy Spirit, God. I had to put my faith in Him again. I had to trust that what I went through was going to be used for me, and that it wasn't going to define me anymore, and that God was the giver of peace. And And if I wanted to live healthy again, then I had to receive his peace, and I had to accept the truth is that bad things happen. We have to choose how we're going to move on after those things happen. God is not a giver of bad things. He doesn't have bad things to give. And when the enemy comes at you, you get to choose how you're going to respond. For a long time, I responded in anger. I responded in sadness and in fear. And I slowly had to start making changes in the way I talked to myself, in the way that I talked to other people, in the way that I thought. My thought process had to change. And that was a big one. I had to basically rewire myself. And I'm still rewiring myself. I find myself saying negative things about myself in my head. I don't say them out loud all the time, but they come up in my head. They're like little pop-ups, and I have to immediately come back at that thought with something positive and something true. And you need to speak truths over yourself. Those truths are going to set you free, and his truth sets you free. And so I got some Bible verses that really helped me during that time. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. A sound mind. And that was a huge one for me, because I feel like my mind has never been sound. But the Bible says that he's given that to us, so it's accessible to us. And of course, my support group, my support system has been helpful with me through this whole process. The support system was huge. They were there for me on my good days, and they were there for me on my bad days. The best and the worst days. They have been there. And they're still here. And that's one of the glorious things about my support system, is that no matter what I go through, and no matter if I mess up, if I screw it up, they're still gonna love me. And I love that. And then lastly, I'd like to just harp on the fact that the medical system did not completely fail me. My psychiatrist and my therapist today are amazing, and they have helped me get on the right medication. And the medication that I'm on helps me to function normally, and it keeps my brain like wired correctly, if that makes sense. Earlier I talked about the fact that I don't have the right hormones and the right balance in my brain to keep my body happy. Well, this medicine helps that to happen. I know some people think that taking medicine is either a cop-out. I've heard that. I've heard people say that it's a weakness. I've heard people say it's a lack of faith. Well, to me, it's none of those. And I feel completely confident in taking medicine. And if I have to take it till the day I die, I will. And I still have faith in God. And I still go to the altar when the pastor asks if anybody needs healing, because I'm still going to believe for healing. But guess what? If it doesn't happen here, like I want, complete healing where I don't have to take medicine anymore, whatever, I still believe God is a healer, and he's going to use medicine, he's going to use people, he's going to use situations to heal me. So today, I'm confident that may not feel okay. I may not be okay sometimes, but the truth is I am okay, and that one day I'll be okay forever. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. It was kind of emotional, so sorry about that. But if you guys would please leave some feedback for me, or if you have any questions whatsoever, you can drop them in the comment box below. Also, you can follow me on my Instagram. I post there pretty often, and I post, some stuff about self-care, things that I like to do to take care of myself physically and my mental health. If you are out there and you have been through a similar experience, I just want you to know that you're not alone. And if you haven't been able to talk about it, it's okay. That you can talk about it when you're ready. We've got to end the stigma by talking about it. There's such a stigma on mental health, and the only way we're going to end it is by bringing it into the light and talking about it. Guys, I love you, and I thank you so much for your support. Bye.